Hello, fellow Rotarians and guests. I'm Lori Alton, and I'm honored to serve as your club president for the Rotary year 2021-2022. The Rotary Club of Columbus has a storied past, beginning in 1915, when a group of civic-minded people saw the need for leaders to come together to find ways to make our community better. And now, 106 years later, we're a vibrant, strong club that continues to place service above self. Our club is diverse, with members across all sectors of business, government, military, healthcare, education, nonprofit and community service, ministry, and the arts. And we come together each week as friends with a shared purpose of learning how we can be more involved in the things that matter to all of us. And we leave committed to changing our community and changing lives. As Rotarians, we are people of action, and it shows. So welcome back to Rotary. Thank you for being here, and thank you for making a difference in our community. Well, hello, and welcome to the September 29th meeting of the Rotary Club of Columbus. It's always so wonderful to see all of you here, and for those of you joining us online, a special warm welcome to you as well. I want to give a quick shout out to Alan Harkness. I saw Alan. Alan, raise your hand. There you are. Alan and his team at the library, I had an opportunity to spend some time with them this week, and I just continue to be impressed at their level of commitment, their energy, and their dedication to all the citizens of Columbus. And I feel like we are a better community because of what you do, Alan, and so thank you. Now, Alan, if he were up here, would say, it's not me, it's my team, but you know, we have to give him a little bit of credit as well. So now would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now it's my pleasure to call on Wayne Anthony to bring us today's invocation in accordance with his faith tradition.
Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. May that be true for us as individuals. Be active in our club. May that be true for us as a community, and then country and world. Anoint, bless, direct, protect. We pray it in your name. Amen. The cup, remember that?
Don't forget the cans. And now it's my pleasure to call on Michael Holbrook to introduce today's visiting Rotarians and guests.
Rotarians, we have a number of fellow Rotarians who have brought guests today. If you can stand, and we'll acknowledge everybody at the end. But Joseph Brannon has brought with him a former member, Alton Russell. Welcome, Alton. Alston Lyle has brought with her an associate in her firm of Morgan & Lyle, Keith Pridgeon. Welcome, Keith. Mike Welsh has brought with him two guests, Nancy Bourne and Chuck Williams. Welcome, Nancy and Chuck. Chris Carlson has brought with him Thad Haygood, who's the new pastor at St. Luke's. Welcome, Thad. Reggie Lewis has brought with him three guests today. Brent Decker, who's with Cure Violence Global Chicago, A.T. Mitchell, who's with Cure Violence Global New York, and Asante Hiltz, who's with Cure Violence Columbus. Isha Spada has brought with him Van Palmer, who's the resident sales coordinator at Magnolia Manor. Michael Tullier has brought with him Julio Llanos, who is with Columbus State Athletics. And last but not least, Ron Williams has brought with him Deborah Bordelon, who is the provost at Columbus State University. Please help me give all these guests a warm Rotary welcome.
Thank you, Michael. So as you know, one of my favorite traditions each week is welcoming and honoring a military guest. And so it's now my pleasure to call on Andy Redmond to please introduce today's Colonel Ralph Puckett Jr. Soldier of the Week.
Good, right there. President Laurie, fellow Rotarians, it's my honor to introduce to you today Sergeant James Pegram. Sergeant Pegram is a military dog handler stationed here at Fort Benning. Sergeant Pegram joined the Army in 2012 from Creedmoor, North Carolina. He's been at Fort Benning for about a year and a half. Already knows next summer he's on his way to Alaska. During his career, he's had 2 combat tours in Afghanistan as a military, leading a military explosive dog. Here he works in the kennel at Fort Benning. As you would expect, he's very well trained. He's completed the military working dog course, the basic leaders course. He's been awarded the Army Commendation Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Achievement Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Medal, among others. Sergeant Pegram married to Jessica. They have 2 7-year-old twin sons. So Sergeant Pegram, we welcome you here today. We got some things for you. First one, you know what to do with the challenge coin. That's a Rotary challenge coin. Thank you. We have a passport to the arts. It has 2 tickets each. We hope you can find a babysitter for the boys and take Jessica. River Center for the Performing Arts, the Columbus Symphony Orchestra, Columbus State University, the Springer Opera House, and of course near and dear to my heart, the National Infantry Museum. Come see us. All right. The last thing we have for you, a very special gift. We talked about Colonel Ralph Puckett, the nation's most recent Medal of Honor recipient. We have his book, Words for Warriors, with an inscription from Colonel Puckett to you. This book was donated by Rotarian Malin Faircloth in honor of his brother, who was a staff sergeant killed in Vietnam, posthumously awarded the Silver Star. So thank you for being here. Please go back to Fort Benning and tell all the soldiers out there that we love them. We appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much.
All right, and you want to?
Good afternoon, everybody. I have to say it is a pleasure being here. I'd like to thank Andy for introducing me and my unit allowing me to take time out of the day, out of training, to come here and to see all the faces, all the guys and gals that came before me. Like I said, it's an honor to be here, and I know what to expect. The turnout is awesome, and I see a lot of wonderful people here, so I'm very, very elated right now. Thank you very much.
Sergeant Pegram, we're so excited that you could join us today, and would you please take back our sincerest appreciation to all the men and women who serve alongside you and the canine people that serve with you, and we hope you'll join us again very soon. So for the past few weeks, we've been sharing some really cool videos with you from organizations that have been supported by the Children's Fund. And so today we have a special video from the Columbus Museum. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Lucy Kassir, Director of Education and Engagement at the Columbus Museum.
And I'm Imani Jones-Pugh, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator here at the Columbus Museum.
And from everyone here at the museum, we would like to thank the Rotary Club of Columbus for supporting our Museum Pals program. Thanks to our generous donors, the Columbus Museum has been able to expand the Museum Pals program from 4 classes in the 2019-2020 school year to serve 24 classes of pre-K students in the Muskogee County School District in the upcoming school year. The Museum Pals program builds art appreciation and literacy skills through in-depth explorations of collection objects. Each month, participating classrooms receive a visit from a museum educator who leads a discussion of a collection object, reads a related picture book, and then facilitates an art-making activity. The program builds creative thinking, problem-solving, and language skills through these monthly activities.
One example of our favorite PALS monthly activities has been observing this woodland period stamped pottery. Visit included close observations of this woodland period stamped pottery. This one here in the center, we looked at some of the swirling details, some of the aging, and even discussed some of the purposes of the ceramic jar. Following our observation of the stamped pottery, we read this book together, Fry Bread, a Native American family story, and we used the story to bring connections to the existence of Native American communities today while discussing some of the traditions some of the kids hold at home. After reading the book together, students and I used modeling clay to create our own stamped pottery, using everyday resources such as buttons and rocks to use resources around us to create similar stamping.
Thanks to your continued support, we are able to bring this program to students all across the Muskogee County School District. Thank you so much. And now here's a word from our director, Marianne Richter.
Rotary Club of Columbus, the Columbus Museum is grateful for your support of Museum Pals. Through the grant you've given us, we are able to reach more Muskogee County School District students this year than ever. Thank you, Rotary, for all you do for the community and for your support of the Columbus Museum. We really appreciate it.
Wonderful. So now it's my pleasure to ask Jean Kemp and Haley Tillery if they would bring us a Rotary football update. It's been a pretty quiet few weeks, right, in football? Or did I miss something?
Thank you, President Laurie. Well, football is off and running. We're in our 4th week of Rotary football. We've got 19 teams that are playing, and this is the way it's shaking out. Right now in 3rd place with 168 points is University of Georgia. Number 2 with 176 points is Auburn. And number 1, again, with 186 points is Alabama. The big news for the Rotary Foundation, the total for 4 weeks, we've got $4,575. So we're off to a good start. Things are going good. Haley, is it too late to play?
No, it's not too late. In fact, some of these teams that we just announced, we know we have some Rotarians who've been a part of this game before who have not signed up yet. So please sign up today so you can play Rotary football, because the biggest winner of all is, of course, the Rotary Foundation. Now we have some exciting games that are this weekend. We have Georgia versus Arkansas, Auburn versus LSU, Georgia Tech versus Pittsburgh, Florida versus Kentucky, and Alabama versus Ole Miss. So, before you leave today, there's some green sheets back there on the table. Make sure you sign up and let's play Rotary football together.
Thank you, Jean and Haley. Like Haley said, the real winner in all of this is the Rotary Foundation, and we appreciate your participation. A couple of announcements today. If you have not been attending and you would like to attend, we are still taking RSVP, so just shoot us a quick email at the end of the week and let us know that you'll be here. If you do have a standing RSVP, you won't need to do anything unless you know you will not be here next week. And then lastly, just a quick reminder, we're still fighting the pandemic in our community, and if you would just remember to put your mask on after you eat, we would appreciate it. Thank you. Now, joining me today at the table is Wayne Anthony, who brought us our invocation. And now it's my pleasure to ask Mike Welch to please introduce today's speaker.
President Laurie and fellow Rotarians, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Brad Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of State for the state of Georgia. Brad is the owner and CEO of Tendon Systems. It's a specialty contracting and engineering design firm with nearly 200 employees. The firm's operated in 35 different states, and he also operates a specialty steel manufacturing plant in Forsyth, Georgia. Prior to becoming Secretary of State, Brad served as 2 terms in the Georgia General Assembly from 2015 until 2019. Brad received his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Western University and his master's degree from Georgia State University, who defeated Auburn for 59 minutes on Saturday night. He's a licensed professional engineer in over 30 states. He and his wife, Tricia, have been married 42 years. They live in Johns Creek and attend North Point Community Church. Fellow Rotarians, would you help me welcome Brad Raffensperger?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I always enjoy coming to speak to Rotarians because you're always optimistic, positive, forward-looking. In fact, if you think about what you've accomplished Rotary worldwide, it's absolutely amazing. You set a goal to defeat polio, you accomplished that. And then you took on a very big goal, an honorable goal of taking on human sex trafficking. And that really, from what I know, started with the Rotarian that's up in Roswell, Georgia. Maybe it started someplace else, but it started with Rotarians, and now Marty Kemp and really the entire state of Georgia, but I think it's becoming a nationwide effort, and that's good, honorable work. Also, you all know about it, but I didn't. My friend that was a roofer, he said he was going on some kind of a mission trip. It wasn't really a mission trip, I guess, but it is when you're working with Rotarians. But it was about water wells that they're putting in other parts of the world so that everyone would have clean water. And you think about everything that Rotary does, you always accomplish your goals. And so I think what it is that you must start off every day reading that four-way test. So we get the Washington politicians to start reading the four-way test. They'd start getting something done for all of us. So, like, number one, is it the truth? Wow, that's novel. Is it fair to everyone concerned? And will it build goodwill and good relationships? And so that's really very important. What Rotary really draws people together, and that's what America needs to be, and that's what America's history has been. Today I want to talk about a couple things in a nonpartisan, bipartisan, we love everyone Rotary way. But talk about, first of all, the recent election reforms, because many people aren't aware of those. As soon as the General Assembly passed and was signed into law by Governor Kemp, SB 202, the Election Integrity Act of 2021, all of a sudden there was a hue and cry, and it was saying that it did things that it really didn't do. So you have to understand what it did do and what it didn't do. When I ran back in 2018, I had a couple key goals, and I was asked to, I'll cover the stuff that no one really cares about, but I'm going to cover it because I was asked to cover it. I said, first of all, I want to make sure only American citizens vote in our elections. So I know you care about that because it's about elections. But the other part, as a business owner, I wanted to make sure we had great corporations, great business licensing programs for all Georgians. I do want to point out a young fellow came up here, and he looks like their first business will be a daycare, and that was our first business. This is the American story. Last year, in the middle of COVID, when we had all of our stay-at-home orders, we had record corporation filings, registrations of new corporations in the state of Georgia, ever. Who would have thunk it? And that really just talks, I think, about the American spirit. But our office, the Secretary of State's office, we oversee the filing of corporations, securities, charities, and then professional licensing. I'm a licensed structural engineer, licensed general contractor. Nursing's our biggest licensed group of folks. And we want to make sure that they get their licenses responsibly handled, respectfully, as quick as possible. And that's really going to be a big focus, and that'll be one of my key missions next year, coming into 2023 when I'm reelected. I'm going to be assumptively positive on that one. But licensing reform to make sure that professional license holders, get their licenses, more expeditious is really important for everyone that has a license. But I know that most of you love coming here for the fellowship, and I get that. But also, you'd probably hope that I would talk about elections. We understand that that is the hot button issue. Because after 2020, after all, why wouldn't it be? And so the Election Integrity Act of 2021 did several key elements. First of all, it brought in, for the very first time, other than when we introduced it last year, but for the very first time it's been put into state law, photo ID for the absentee ballot process. When I ran back in 2018, what I said is we need to keep photo ID, and we need to have it for all forms of voting. For in-person voting early, in-person voting on the day of election, but also absentee voting. Finally, this year, 3 years later, the General Assembly put that into state law. Now, what we're doing, it's a form of photo ID. It's using your driver's license number, and 98%, only 2% of people do not have a driver's license, that are registered in the state of Georgia. But by doing that, what we've moved from is a subjective way with signature match to an objective way with driver's license number. You either that person on the driver's license or you aren't. And what we think that's going to do is restore confidence on both sides of the aisle. Here's a little known secret. We've been sued on signature match both by the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. We just took that off the table, and we've gone to an objective measure. And that's one that I've been supporting now for over 3 years, and I'm glad that the General Assembly did that. There were some bills that were passed or that were filed that would have reduced the number of early days of voting. But what got passed was actually expanding early voting, but also making that mandatory for all 159 counties. So all 159 counties now will have 3 weeks of early voting, 2 mandatory Saturdays. And then if local counties would like to, they can add up to 2 days of Sunday voting, so up to 19 days. Now, when I started saying this when I was interviewed by the press, well, go ahead and compare that to New York, New Jersey, or Delaware. They wanted to change the topic. Georgia leads on the amount of early voting. I shouldn't go any farther before I do get a big shout out to Nancy Bourne right here. And so Nancy Bourne, if you don't know, she is your election director for Muskogee County. We have like a superstar of election directors, and she's been recognized not just by us, our office. We know she's a superstar. Not just all of you who know she's a superstar, but all of her other 158 election director peers in the Election Officials Association of Georgia. And she does a tremendous job. And I think and if there's anything that she doesn't agree with today, she'll correct me later, hopefully privately. But I think she would really agree that one of the best things that election directors love is early voting. It's like a pressure relief valve. They hope that you come in on the first day of early voting. If not that, the second, but the first week. But they know that that really just allows for a more uniform throughput, and that's a good thing. Then the other thing that's really important to know is that we've cut down on lines. So last year, when we had the June 2020 primary, there were some counties that really struggled with that. And I know that that made national news. But what you have to understand, there was actually 139 of the 159 counties that started at 7 a.m. and finished at 7 a.m. That's called success. Now, the other 20 counties of that, about 15 counties just had some minor issues. And so that was still very successful. There were about 5 counties that really struggled. So we went to work working with the counties. We started giving them some objective criteria lines. The average wait time statewide on election afternoon of November was actually less than 3 minutes in the afternoon. And we were tracking it, and I screenshot it, and it's on my phone. So lest anyone ever wants to challenge me on that. So the counties did a great job. But what we did say is people hate long lines. So for the very first time, this Senate put in their bill that they'll keep the lines short. They have to be less than 1 hour. If they are more than 1 hour, the next election cycle, you have to add equipment, or you have to bust that precinct in half, so you have half the number of voters. But election directors, they understand how important they've done a tremendous job, and we need to give them a great shout out on that also. The other one is that for the very first time, we put into drop boxes. So last year when we had COVID, everyone was wearing masks like several people are in the crowd right now. Everyone was concerned. First of all, voters were concerned about they didn't want to go inside the buildings if they had to drop off an absentee ballot drop box. But the county election directors, they didn't want you inside their office, and that's why the drop boxes were outside the building. They now have been moved in, and this environment will be moved inside an election office or a government facility, and there'll be one drop box for every 100,000 voters. Many people don't realize that although some counties had lots of them, there are still over 20 counties that didn't have a single one. So now every county will have to have at least one, and then one for every 100,000 voters. And so it's really population-based. It's almost like how congressional representation works. And I think that's a very fair solution. Now, some of the counties would like to have a few more, and we won't ask any of the county elected directors what their opinion is today, but we do know that from what I've seen from the General Assembly, if there is a need for more down the road, I'm sure that the General Assembly will consider that. The one thing that really got spun up, and I have to explain this, is about the ban on giving water in that 150-foot no politicking zone. We've had this 150-foot no electioneering zone for years. And what was happening is that some campaigns were actually coming in with their team, their favorite team, emblazoned on their t-shirt, hey, I'm with team so-and-so. You could tell who they were. They didn't have to say anything, and giving that bottle of water. And it started almost, many people felt on the other side, it bordered on electioneering. So what they said is, if you're going to hand out water, you got to do it outside the 150-foot zone. That's all it is, but obviously that got spun up by the national media. The other thing that people don't understand or are concerned about, the state election board has been changed. I no longer chair it, and I do think that at some point in the future, I think the people of Georgia will regret that. And the reason I say that, it's not about who the person is, who your Secretary of State is that I am accountable to the voters. Now it'll be a person that is unelected. And my concern has always been having unelected boards, commissions, and authority. And when I had a bill in the General Assembly, I wanted to make sure that everyone that was on a government board, commission, authority was an American citizen. I was always concerned about the power of unelected boards. And so now I have a board that is unelected, and I think that the voters want to know how do you hold that accountable. That said, though, the state election board does not want to be counties. But don't you have to have accountability in a system? In other words, if you have a county that has been reported in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is Fulton County since 1993, for having mismanagement, election dysfunction, at some point you have to say enough is enough. And so the election board now has some authority to come inside and do a deep dive, and they can replace that board if that's what is required. It will be done with a thoughtful process, and that's actually what's ongoing right now. So they have one Democrat board member, they have one Republican board member from two different parts of the state, along with the general counsel from the Secretary of State's office, to do a deep dive and then report back to the full member state election board of what needs to happen. I think that accountability measure, first of all, it gets people's attention. And that's one thing about that. Once you know that your teacher is going to grade your paper, do you think you're going to do a better job with that? When you find out that your teacher really doesn't grade those essays because it's a 2,000-word essay, you might cut some corners. You might pull something out of an encyclopedia. But when you know the teacher's going to grade that paper, you're going to make sure you do your homework. And so that's what we really want to see, is all 159 counties run smoothly, uniformly, and have a good process in place. This is probably the best news for all of you, that we had the Senate runoff that lasted for 2 months, and you thought, how many more pieces of mail can I get for all these campaigns? Well, what actually was supposed to happen, but the counties couldn't really make that happen, they were supposed to run the state runoff for the PSC Commission in December, and then the Senate runoff had to be 9 weeks later, and that's why that was in January. Because we now moved to ranked choice voting for the military overseas balloting situation, and those ballots only, we can shorten everything down to the 4-week runoff period. And I know that's a tight turnaround for the counties, and we hear that, we hear their pain points, but also it does mean that everything will be done before Christmas. So that's a little bit about the overview of everything we did with SB 202. One of the things that happened in 2020 is that we started hearing the word fraud, and we started hearing on a national way. But if those of you that lived here since 2018, you'll remember that there was something that was similar but different, and it was the other side of the coin, and that was voter suppression. In 2018, and here's where I probably start losing everyone, because I'm going to offend people on this side and I'm going to offend people on that side, and I understand that. But Stacey Abrams lost the state of Georgia by 55,000 votes, and she never conceded. And what she said, it was voter suppression. In fact, she said the machines flipped votes. And she even had a lawsuit for the lieutenant governor's race. Roll that forward 2 years later, and we started hearing about voter fraud. And we wanted to make sure that we were going to run, a fair and accurate election. In fact, when we went and we knew that we were going to have a big uptick in absentee ballots, we formed an absentee ballot fraud task force. And one of the people we put on it was Bobby Christine, the U.S. attorney from the Southern District, who's now the prosecuting attorney over in Columbia County, Georgia. When we had a bipartisan group of people looking at the absentee ballot fraud task force, because that's where the ballot is not connected to the system, and so it's something that happens remotely, and we understand the challenges of that, but we also understand the challenges of voting in a pandemic. But a lot of things were said. One of the things that were said, and so we wanted to run it down, they said that there's 10,000 dead people that voted. Right now, when I wrote my letter to Congress back in January, I said that we found 2. I think we're up to 4 now, but you can see that it would nowhere overturn the results of the election. People said that there were 66,000 underage voters. There were 0. But what people don't understand, many people, is that when you're 17 and a half in the state of Georgia, you can register to vote. And so if you just look at the year that they were born, you could say, oh, that's an underage voter. No, they turned 18 before November. And so we ran every single one of those 66,000 people down the line, and everyone was 18 over the day, on election day. People said that there was over 2,000 felons that voted. We found up to a maximum of 74 felons under sentence that could have voted. And so that is another area. We said that there was 2,400 unregistered voters. There were 0. So every allegation that was made, we went ahead and did. We did a signature match study in Cobb County. Currently, right now, there's Judge Amaro has a case he's looking at how to audit Fulton County, and I think he'll be coming out. I know he'll be coming out with a ruling. It's in his hands, but I believe that you'll see additional, review done in the Fulton County area. But we ran down every single area to answer people's questions. But what people need to understand, we have some very good numbers, and it's out there, and you can add up the numbers yourself. 28,000 people in Georgia who voted skipped the presidential ballot. They voted everything down below the presidential. They skipped the presidential ballot. We also noted that Senator David Perdue got 20,000 more votes in the metropolitan Atlanta area and Athens areas than President Trump. And we also noticed that in the Republican congressional areas, they got 33,000 more votes than President Trump did. And so those really are, numbers, and the numbers never lie. And so it's just an election where, as a Republican, I'll take off my nonpartisan, bipartisan Rotary hat, we just didn't turn out enough people for the top of the ticket. And so that is really what happened at the end of the day. And obviously we were shocked because Republicans had won this state at the presidential level for over 20 years. But we move on because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we run honest and fair elections. We swear an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the laws of Georgia, and integrity counts. The real challenge that we're going to have as a country is if we don't fix this issue, then we're going to continue to plague us. That when every candidate loses an election, be it Stacey Abrams or be it on our side, they question the results. I understand that everyone's disappointed when they don't win, when their team doesn't win. But you have to, have faith in the process. We have 159 election directors, and we've got some rock stars. And you have to also understand what backs them up is a support team of people that always also have integrity. And what backs those up, typically your poll workers. And those are people are probably some of you in here. Those are people that you meet at Rotary, Kiwanis, church, soccer fields. You think about all these folks, those are your poll workers. And what they're trying to do is they're just trying to do their job. And they're trying to do it with grace. They're trying to do it with integrity. Because at the end of the day, that's what it gets down to. It really gets down to the Rotary values of kindness, respectful discourse, and really just working hard, whatever that is. Work for your heart out for your cause. And understand that things a lot of times will go your way and sometimes they won't. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you can trust the process. So we're going to fight for honest and fair elections here in Georgia. Now, I know I haven't answered everyone's questions, and if you have time, you're the timekeepers. I'll take as many questions as time will allow. So thank you very much for having me.
We have a few minutes for questions, and we do have some microphones out there, and so we will, if you have a question, let's use the microphone so that we can hear you. So Any questions?
I'll ask the
Joe?
first question, break the ice. I appreciate you talking through the election process, where the numbers were. I know it's on everybody's mind. I have a question regarding your influence on the business community. I know that Georgia's been voted the #1 place to do business multiple times in the past, and just curious to learn what Secretary of State's office is doing to continue to support those efforts and continue to make Georgia a great place to operate a business.
Well, whatever we can do to get out of business person's way, I think is the best thing, because all the good ideas that people have about how to run a business, they're really in the business owner's brain or in his circle of advisors that have want to do something. So I think our job is to get your corporation as soon as you want to fill out get your paperwork done and get that back to you so you can get harder, so you can get up to speed. We've done a great outreach program called She Leads, which is financial empowerment for female business owners, female entrepreneurs. We did one in Columbus, Georgia. We've done those remotely. We did one down in Tifton, Georgia, and then COVID hit, and we've not been able to do those in person, but we'll do those, and that's really important. I know that there's a young gentleman here that's starting a daycare business. That was our first business, but whatever we can do to encourage business formation is something we want to remove obstacles. So when a business owner came up to me years ago, he says, Brad, how come I have to renew my corporation every year? Why can't I do that 5 or 10 years? Like I can with my website. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. So I was in the General Assembly. I introduced House Bill 87, which will allow you to renew your corporation for up to 3 years, 1, 2, or 3 years. And I finally got it passed, got 100%. I think one Democrat voted against it. It was a great bill. Everyone loved it, bipartisan. Got it passed, signed into law, and then we implemented it as Secretary of State. So those are the kind of things. So if you have ideas on we can remove barriers to help more business growth, that's what we really want to do. We need to leverage off of every regional city's assets. So Columbus is sitting here. I had a plant here for several years. I had a partner that was based in Columbus. He's since passed, but I understand. You have about 5 big economic movers in Columbus. How do we leverage those for this whole region so your area can continue to prosper? And I want to hear from you on what we can do. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, there's a move about on the May 2022 primary election to move that date until June after the redistricting. Can you give us what your position is on moving that primary?
Our office has no position. That is a position by the General Assembly. That'll come down by law. It is set in law, and it would take a move by there. I do note that about 130 of the 159 election directors sent a letter to us and the governor and the General Assembly why they would like to see that happen. And so I would suggest that people who like to see that moved continue to lobby their local representatives.
Any other questions?
Mr. Secretary, of all the new businesses, how is the manufacturing sector? I mean, we see a lot of businesses, and you say businesses, but manufacturing, and where they have a heavy investment and in capital facilities and so on and so forth. Manufacturing base looking.
I'd like to see us be even stronger in manufacturing. It's not because I'm in that business, but just manufacturing is so good because it's stable and it creates good jobs. It's just really, it's not going to pick up and leave. And I think what you're seeing now, because really worldwide events, that people are realizing that they had too many baskets in one country's area. And so now they're trying to say, okay, we need to move some of that manufacturing and onshore. So you saw Caterpillar, did some onshoring of manufacturing, came to Georgia. But whatever we can do that. I think that Columbus has an awful lot. And you look at like what could we do with robotics in the Columbus area and leveraging off of some of the military applications that you're going to see. I think aerospace would be another one. We already have Gulfstream. We also have Pratt & Whitney. What other areas that we could really deepen that? Because those are just tremendous careers that you have. What I'd like to see is that everyone that has I'm an engineer, but I'd like to see everyone that has an engineering degree know that they have a job here in Georgia. I met a friend, he had a degree called manufacturing engineering. I said, I've never heard of that one. I've heard material science, I heard of mechanical. He got that up at University of Ohio, came here and started a plant up in Cherokee County, and he's making extruded like plastic sheet pile for marine environments, but it's here in Georgia. But that's what we need to really look at. How do we do that? And then also, if you're in a state like Illinois that is really taxing their business owners, very severely, then how do you really encourage that? I'd love to put a billboard up right outside of Chicago and say, come on down to Georgia, open for business. But that's what I think it's going to take, is really, making sure we reach out, because they're just great businesses to have. And if you look at Columbus Foundries, we buy from them in our industry, but they've been here for 100 years, probably 150 years. And it's just really important, I think, for not just Columbus, but for the entire state. So thanks. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Raffensperger. We certainly appreciate an update on the election, particularly the new voting law, some clarification. We appreciate all the information you bring. And one of our traditions with our speakers is to place a brand new children's book with your name in our public library. So we will be doing that. So thank you. And I would like to re-welcome all of our visitors and guests, particularly Sergeant Pegram. We're so glad that you were here. We appreciate you being here. And I would also like to quickly say hello to Haisha. Haisha, I saw you. Oh, there you are. You doing okay? Having a good week? Wonderful. If you haven't had a chance to speak to Haisha, I strongly encourage you to do so. She is a wonderful young lady. And so with no further business, well, actually, you'll want to join us next week when we will have, our speaker will be Bryce Maddox with Teen Challenge. And so until we meet next week, let's go make a difference.